In this video, I want to talk about one of the words usually translated as forever or eternal or perpetual in the Torah, which is the word Olam. This is a word we see throughout the text, and I will now provide three different examples of it. In Exodus 3:15, when Elohim refers to his name being forever, it says, "This is my name for Olam, and this is my invocation for generation to generation." Or alternatively, my remembrance for all generations. Also, we see this word repeatedly in the commands, especially in commandments which some people refer to as ceremonial laws, such as in Exodus 27:21, in reference to the descendants of Aaron or Aharon tending the lamps in the tent of meeting. It is also used with other commands, including the Shabbat command in Exodus 31:16 through 17, which says that the Shabbat is a covenant of Olam and a sign for Olam. There are many other examples, of course, and I will discuss others as we go on, but I wanted to give some context and clarify which word we are looking at from the beginning. In my experience, this is a word that commonly comes up whenever people are discussing or debating whether the law is relevant today. I remember early on in my observance, I would attempt to show people that I knew that Elohim cares about his commands, and among other things, I would show or present verses that included this word. Of course, as many of you are fully aware, no doubt, and this is somewhat of an aside, facts and logic don't really matter to the human mind. So beyond simple matters of logic like picking out milk at the store that's in date and not expired, beyond something as simple and emotionally detached as that, we simply can't effectively use reason or objectivity when looking at something. So as you know, there has to be some kind of mindset shift or pre-existing openness before that kind of evidence regarding the Torah can even matter to a person. Now, you have to have a mental frame around the issue that's conducive to even seeing the evidence before you can process it, or sometimes before you can actually see it at all. Just briefly, there was a study where people were asked to look at playing cards with different suits like spades and hearts, and then they were asked to identify which card it was that they were shown. So they'd be shown say the five of hearts or something like that, and then they'd be asked to tell the experimenter, okay, that's the five of hearts, and then they would be shown the next card in the series. And part of the experiment, though, was that they included these specially made cards without the knowledge of the participants, and those special cards were in the wrong color from what would normally be expected. So instead of just having it be what we would normally assume about cards, there were some cards mixed in that had red spades or black hearts on them. And whenever the individual was asked to identify the special card in this case, they were just expecting what they understood to be the normal suits, because they were using the normal frame surrounding the topic of playing cards, so they would misidentify those special cards when they were presented. And then the experimenter would tell them that that was wrong, they needed to look again, and sometimes the people would kind of pause for a second or two and then realize, oh, okay, I see, that's a red spade. But on the other hand, some people actually reported hallucinating. Of course, they personally didn't understand what they were doing as hallucinating, but they were seeing things that were not actually there, like black and red being mixed together on the same card, even though that was not actual physical reality. And some of these people were never able to process what was going on and never could identify these special cards. So having a certain mental frame about an issue can prevent us from seeing things, and if that can happen even with something as innocuous and as emotionally irrelevant as playing cards, just think about what might happen with something like core theological beliefs. The standard suits of playing cards are probably not some fundamental or significant belief for people, and people are not likely to get kicked out of their tribe or rejected by their family or friends just because they recognize a special playing card. So keep that in mind, not just for how we understand other people out there, but in analyzing ourselves also. So getting back to this word olam, most of the time whenever I would bring up passages that included this word, it would just kind of go in one ear and out the other, so to speak, or it might seem odd to the person for a few seconds, but then would just get filed away as something hard to understand but probably irrelevant, I assume, therefore having no effect. But other times I did encounter people that would kind of try to push back on the meaning of the word. A few people pointed out, with varying degrees of their personal certainty, that it may not really mean forever. Of course, while this was sometimes done, at least seemingly from my perspective, as a way to just dismiss one piece of evidence, therefore effectively dismissing every piece of evidence in one's mind just because that is how humans think for whatever reason. But regardless of any presumed motive behind it, there actually is basis for saying that olam doesn't exactly mean forever. Forever is not the precise meaning of olam. There are times when the word is used in the text and it clearly does not mean forever. For example, in Deuteronomy 32:7, it refers to remembering the days of Olam, and this is apparently a period of time in the past. Forever does not really fit here in the way that we would normally use that. Now, likewise, in Deuteronomy 33:15, the word is used in parallel to ancient mountains. So in this case, one might assume that it either means long ago or primordial or long enduring. So clearly forever is not the precise meaning of the word, at least not in every case. On the other hand, there are clear examples where the practical implication or meaning of the word is forever or for all time. There are a number of verses where the word is used to describe something like a command or otherwise, and either in that verse or in a parallel verse that refers to the same subject, it will say additional things which make that meaning of forever clear for that context. For example, in Deuteronomy 13, 16, or 17, it talks about a city that is being destroyed and is supposed to be a ruin heap of olam. And it says it shall not be built further. So if it's never being rebuilt, then practically speaking, it is supposed to be a ruin heap of forever, at least in some sense. There are also other examples of this, like that the priesthood of Aaron. Exodus 29:9 uses the word olam when describing Aaron and his sons holding the priesthood. And while this verse by itself does not clarify this, we can look to other verses, such as Deuteronomy 18:5, which says that the Levitical priesthood is chosen for all of the days. Translated literally, it says all of the days, and all of the days is effectively forever. So there are multiple examples outside of this also, which indicate a meaning of forever being implied by the use of olam, or at least contexts which have that meaning accompanying it. One good thing about this word is that we have a lot of examples of it being used, so there are a lot of context clues, and also we have clearly related words in other Semitic languages which are used in many of the same ways. It's easier to glean information about this word than it is for some of the other words of the text. That being said, one complication is that we don't really have a comparable word in English that carries this exact category of meaning that olam does in Hebrew. And this is a common occurrence because we cannot expect exact overlap between distinct languages, but since this refers to, at least in part, a concept, it can be a little bit unusual to deal with. As mentioned, we have situations where the word is used to refer to the past or to times just long ago. There are examples where it refers to the future or seemingly forever in some cases. There are other examples like Exodus 21:6 that talk about a servant serving for Olam, and this phrase almost exactly appears in other languages too. So one might infer a practical meaning of for life in that case. Also, we have a number of examples of it in Hebrew and otherwise referring to Elohim, either the true Elohim or other gods that other people are worshiping. It is sometimes used by the worshipers to describe the reign of Elohim. There's an example of such a description in Exodus 15:18, and as somewhat of an aside again, obviously there are two words which appear here in this verse. And I remember a person a while back suggesting that maybe the first word being Olam doesn't mean forever, but the second word supposedly does. If you look into that second word, you will see that it is used in almost exactly the same ways that the word Olam is used, including for referring to the past, etc., and I would see it as synonymous based on my study of it. Going back to Olam, there are examples of Olam describing the Elohim himself. So it will say that the Elohim is Olam or of Olam, and that could be seen as describing the Elohim as eternal, or in some cases as pre-existing or something like that, depending on the context. One other side meaning that is sometimes implied by the word, at least in other related languages that I saw, is the world. And what I mean is that the word itself, at least in some contexts, can mean the world. That's not necessarily the way it is normally used, but it is something that I did come across in my reading, so I thought I would include that. So the word can be used for a long period of time into the past as well as into the future. Essentially what I see is that Olam typically refers to a long, undefined, or indefinite period of time, age, or duration. The word eon, E-O-N, could be seen as a relatively close translation of it conceptually. Practically speaking, though, there are plenty of examples where the meaning implied by the word is forever, or for all future time. And that's backed up by other things which are said either alongside it or elsewhere talking about the same subject. We talked about that with Deuteronomy 13 when it talks about the ruin pile that is never rebuilt. And the way I would translate the word most literally might be long enduring or long enduring time. So it is a long enduring ruin. The same with the priesthood of Aaron. It's a long enduring priesthood, and of course we have the reference which says the Levitical priesthood is for all of the days. That also applies with examples going into the past, such as with Deuteronomy 33:15, where the hills are either long enduring or from a long time ago in some sense. In most cases that Olam is used, there is not a clear indication of an exact span of time which is being referred to, nor is there any indication as to when the theoretical end of that time might be. And in my view, it's likely that those ideas are not even applicable or relevant to the concept behind the word. The concept of time may not even be implied by this word in the way that we would think about time. One might look to the possible etymology of the word, and while this is not certain, one might look at it as being related to the word for obscure or concealed or hidden. And if one assumes the connection to that word, then one might see it as a time, or at least in some sense, a time that is obscured or unknown or otherwise undefined. While that connection is not a certainty, that may be worth considering. What I have arrived at for Olam is that it is a long enduring duration. Forever is not the literal meaning, but in many cases that is what is practically implied.